Hey everyone, bonjour, mes amis.
Almost about.
It's horrible. Sorry, Karen. Um,
I'm,
so
I'm free as French fry.
yeah, I took 5 years of French. I lived in Marseille for 6 months. You'd think I'd be able to speak French, but I try. I try. I can understand it when I listen to it, and
I have to say this, Corinne. I'm excited, and I'm in a way dreading July when we're going to Montreal. Like somebody told me, don't take your car to Montreal because my license plate is Leafs one.
Oh dear.
He says
Yeah.
your car will get trashed. I'm
I
like,
did
That
not know
could be
that.
an
Yeah,
issue.
yeah.
That
oh
could be an
man,
issue. Good luck with that.
boy. Yeah, that's you can never dread going to Montreal. It is by
No.
far.
I'm excited,
Oh
but
yeah. No, but I understand. But at least one license plate. Yeah.
Although I think we're not that mean, so maybe someone will just
No.
like write on your car it was 3-1, something like that.
Great.
That's our kind of thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Carve it with a screwdriver. Thank you.
My favorite city in the world, Montreal, and it's funny because I was a kid. I would make my parents, we'd drive every summer. My dad got us through the 48 states by car before I graduated high school. That was his goal. So I've traveled through all of the country.
Well, if he drove you to Hawaii, I would worry.
Yeah, but back in the good old days of no GPSs, just the Rand McNally Road atlases and the mobile travel guides, and just like going state to state. I navigated. I was a navigator through the whole thing. Every year get up to the Northeast, I would say we have to go to Montreal. So we would try at some point to go to Montreal, and just because it's just the most amazing.
Can I just say how spoiled we are now with the Google Maps? Because
oh my god,
yeah. I bought, and this was maybe 12, 13 years ago. I bought the Garmin map thing. So, and I visited friends downstate, and I was looking for the shortest route. And of course, I had accidentally programmed the Garmin to avoid toll roads. So it was it was sending me through like eastern central Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I can't imagine going from where you are downstate without toll roads. Like that's
right.
just
And my friends lived in Orange County, like an hour outside of New York City, and it was sending me into Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it would have to.
I mean, and then I realized something's wrong here, and I just followed it. So
at least you had an app. When I moved back from England to Lévis, which is near Quebec City, the first time I decided I was going to go and see a Habs game, my dad's like, "Do you know the road to actually get there?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's pretty easy to get to Montreal." It's like, "Yes, but in Montreal," I'm like, "Well, I'm not sure yet, but I'll work it out." And he comes upstairs and he brings this road map that's all folded, then proceeds to unfold it, and he's like, "You see the forums right there?"
There you go.
Dad, I'm going to Montreal in 2011, not 1985.
That's amazing.
The building is not even on your map.
Do you remember?
With my phone. Thanks.
You remember there was a brief period of time between like the road atlas time and then like the GPS time when you could go to AAA and they would print out directions for you. Yeah. Like you could say I was going to Montreal. They would print them out for you in detail, the directions. Completely, and I was offended by it because I was always the route planner. Like I love planning routes, and I still do, and I still to this day. Like I don't put my GPS on very often, and and even when I'm unless the only reason I use it is for traffic. Like that's my only thing.
I use it for time. I use it to find out how long it's going to take me. I pretty much know how to get to my friend's place, but no. I mean, I remember when I had the New York State map, and I'm driving down Highway 17 at about 70 miles an hour, and I got the map, and I'm looking where the hell's Horseheads? It's like
oh my god, yeah. And then MapQuest says mirror. Yep, I remember MapQuest in the chat room. He's saying remember MapQuest for sure. Oh my gosh, it was but I'm super weird because I just have these little obsessions, as you guys know. And one of the ones was I used to go to work. For the brief period of time, I actually held a job that I had to drive to. There was like 25 different ways to go. It was only 6 miles away, but I could go every possible way. And I would be the kind of guy who would have like the stopwatch out, literally trying to figure out to maximize the exact route. There we go. That was one thing I did. The other thing I did, because my dad was obsessed with directions, because my dad was a navigator in the Air Force, so he was obsessed with directions too. So we both had that love. When I first got my car, my dad let me in on the game that he and his friends have been playing for years, which was car hide and seek. And how car hide and seek worked was they would map out like a county in New Jersey, Camden County, Burlington County. The counties are pretty big, and one guy would just drive away, and you would give that guy 5 minutes, and then you had to try to find him in the next 20 minutes. And you would just basically, the concept of driving through, and sometimes there was the strategy of just going someplace. You had to stay on a street. You could not park in a parking lot. You had to be on the street. So when you drove, you just had to find the other person. And it would be pretty funny because you would sort of sense that you would see the person drive past sometimes, like drive past the road, and you watch them just go right by, and like, they missed this completely.
Well, I have to say that because what Corinne told me before the show, and for many people in Buffalo, there's a lot of car hide and seek going on right now because of there's like 4-foot snow drifts.
Oh yeah, no, you guys have that.
Yeah, that's the case in Montreal. I gotta go and do an archaeological search for my car later this afternoon. I've got no clue.
Oh yeah. I've been trapped in the city in snow too. All right, let's move on here. My rink, by the way, is starting to freeze. I'm really excited about that. In the back, I got out there and I had the big debate. My little pre-show I was going to give I had the big debate right before the storm. We had a storm that came through yesterday, and it was the worst weather. Like I love snow, but I hate snow that turns to rain. That's just my least favorite thing in the world.
Are the foxes watching? Are they doing?
Yeah, the foxes underneath the rink have vacated. I went out there and I jumped up and down on the rink a couple times, and just to get them out of there because I get scared for them. But we don't mind them living there in the off season. We actually put GoPros down there to watch them sometimes. But yeah, so I was out there and I'm like, the debate of whether to put water on my rink before the storm or after the storm was like the big thing. So I just laid the tarp and I let nature do its thing. So I went out there and I've got a nice little thin little layer of ice, which is great because that's the way to do it. And it's actually the tarp's on top of what was frozen underneath it, which was last year's rink, which had turned into a pond full of frogs. Like we had a bunch of frogs. And for whatever, so my son's like, we get, some of the frogs were actually hibernating under the ice. So this whole thing is kind of crazy. But anyway, that's what we're doing now. Let's move on. Here we go. We got things to talk about. Ready, set, go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, January 18th, 2022.
Ribbit. I'm Michael Agello.
And I'm Karen Nice.
And I am Eklund, and we are very, very happy today to be joined by Karen Hines, who's going to help us navigate what is happening today. Speaking of navigation, the Montreal Canadiens have named their general manager, and we knew it came down to a couple people, and I want to talk about the different people it came down to, Karen. But let's start with the winner. What are your thoughts?
Well, the winner, Kent Hughes. I'm quite happy with that choice, to be honest, because he seems to have all the experience required if you consider he's an experienced agent. And what he doesn't know how to do, he's never been an executive for a team, but there's Jeff Gorton that can fill in for that. So they're going to be a good, two-headed monster. I mean, Toronto's got Matthews and Marner. We've got one in the front office. Don't have one guys, but we'll take it as execs.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. But what's annoying me, though, is that even before the final choice was announced, there were already people complaining that, there we are. It's again going to be 3 Anglophone people leading the Montreal Canadiens and blah, blah, blah. Because, it's Kent Hughes. It's not Jean Tremblay. So, he's not French enough, basically. Because what you need to know is that Kent Hughes was born in Montreal. He's fluent in French. Yes, English is his first language, but
yeah, if you're born in Montreal, how could you be arguing about it? I mean, even if you do want to, and I do want to honor the culture, and no one does it better than you. I mean, you are by far the most incredible Montreal Canadiens writer, and I hear this all the time, and I believe it, and I feel this way. Like, I feel unbelievably lucky to have both. I mean, both you guys are covering 2 of the biggest teams in the league, and you're 2 of the best that there are. And we have you guys on the website, and that just makes me so proud every day. Just can't say enough about that. But the reality is also that you write every day in French and English, which is just amazing. And I mean, that is just a lot of work and a lot of, but so you respect this culture, but even you who does that every day, when somebody writes in French and English every day because you respect the culture, comes out and says that you think it's unbelievable that people are ripping him, I'm 100% behind you.
Well, the thing is, I mean, my job is to communicate with the fans. So I want to reach the most fans possible in French and in English. The GM's job, however, is to sign contracts and make deals. And Newsflash, he does it with people who speak English.
Well,
so,
well, this is the thing. I have to tip my hat to Elliot Friedman, because after Bergevin was let go, and after they hired Gorton and they asked who's going to be brought in as a GM over a month ago, he said Kent Hughes. He mentioned, nobody really had heard his name, and
Mathias Brunet from La Presse said it early December.
Right. I mean, it was around that same time. So I don't know who did it first, but I heard Friedman say it, and I put that mental note in there. It's like, okay, so he was an agent with Cortex Management in Boston. He represents Patrice Bergeron, which, of course, Corinne, as soon as I heard that, and Bergeron's an unrestricted free agent, I'm like, oh, gee, what are we going to talk about in the summer? He has no management experience. And the perception here is, and not to say that he's not going to be useful, because he will be, because him and Gorton have a good relationship. But a lot of people think, the critics of this, is that he's a beard for Gorton, that Gorton's going to be the GM and the president. He's going to make all the hockey moves, and that Hughes is sort of like the spokesman. I don't believe that. I think they'll work in concert, but that's the appearance to some people.
It is, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, there are many teams around the league that have the same structure. Besides, they've already hired a spokesman. They got rid of the VP of communications, and they replaced him with Chantal Maccabé, who was actually the face of RDS, and who's been speaking to the media now on the daily,
doing a great job,
giving updates and everything. And even this morning, she actually tweeted, just so you know, Kent Hughes does speak French. You'll see it tomorrow at the press conference. But she's really, she's left front and center right now giving updates. So she's the spokesperson, definitely. There's no mistake about that. And I don't think that he's just going to be a puppet. I think he's going to learn from Gorton a great deal, but he's not going to be a puppet.
I don't think so either. And I mean, we talked about, definitely it was important to have somebody who could just be the spokesperson, English, French, whatever. The spokesperson is important for a team. It is. And Gorton's not the best at that. I will say that. I mean, he's not terrible at it, but he is really good at what he does. There's no question about it. What he built in New York, we're seeing, we're seeing the results of that, right? That is a team that's going to be set for many years to come. But he's not the greatest PR guy, and that affected him.
And I think, and we said this when Gorton was hired, Corinne, because the challenge that he faces in Montreal is very similar to the challenge that he faced in New York. He's got to do a lot of cleanup in terms of long-term contracts on that roster, players that they may, not want to get rid of, but have to get rid of to sort of move forward. I mean, right now they're in a battle to finish dead last to have the best chance to draft Shane Wright. I don't think this is a quick turnaround. I don't think this is like a 1 year and then they're all of a sudden they're back contending for the Stanley Cup. I think this is a 2 or 3 year build, and they have to build the organization in terms of who they draft and who they develop, and clean out the roster of players that have long-term, like Gallagher and Price and a few others.
They have to, because, the last regime sort of built around Price, Weber, and all that, and they threw so much money at the net and the blue line that the Canadians always struggle to score goals. But you actually need to score to win. So now it's time to reset. And,
ironic, right?
I like Carey Price, but I hope he goes elsewhere and wins the Stanley Cup elsewhere.
Yeah,
I want to see a team that can score goals. I like goaltending.
And you know what? You're not alone, because, I mean, Montreal being my favorite team growing up, when I grew up, and I'm older than you, but, but when I grew up, this was the Flying Frenchman. This was an offensive juggernaut. What many people who, are younger saw the Oilers in the 80s. I saw the Canadians, and Mike, you saw the Canadians in the 70s. And they were crazy fast. They were crazy good. They weren't, and they came in waves. And
of course I associate with the, I wasn't around to watch Beliveau and those but I did see them in the 70s with Cornwallis and with Lafleur and Lemaire and Schutt and Larry Robinson and Dryden in goal. But if you think about it, the 86 Stanley Cup winner was not a big offensive team. It was it was centered around Roy. The 93 team was extremely opportunistic offensively. It had guys like Muller and I think Vinny Domfus was on it.
Yeah.
But
and Leclerc, who had like the unbelievable
playoff of the century. But what I'm saying is that team wasn't a big scoring team. They haven't really been a big scoring offensive team for 40 years. I mean, this in the last decade, it was Pacioretty and Subban and Price. And the team last year was opportunistic offensively, took advantage of teams that choked like Toronto and Winnipeg. So I mean, it would be nice to see this team sort of regenerate that mentality, that offensive-minded mentality. But I don't know if that's possible. I mean, they're going to try, but they're going to have some high draft picks over the next 2 or 3 years to do it.
Well, here's the thing, and I'd like to answer. I'm sorry for interrupting, but here's the thing. Most teams have to go through rebuilds at some point, right? And there is, in a way, it's kind of like the dream scenario to have like that last crazy Stanley Cup run like they had last year before a rebuild. Usually what happens is you have like teams that are just dismal for like 4 or 5 or 6 years, and eventually they decide to rebuild because they can't get over the hump and they're stuck in the middle, where Montreal does get that one, and the fans get that one last hurrah before 5 or 6.
But let's face it, that last hurrah was brought on by the perfect storm.
The
fact that we got in the
still happens.
bubble playoffs,
it's still such a great memory. I mean, the feeling of going to a playoff game, and you were in the arena for those games too. And you know what that's like. I mean, that's a memory that you'll never forget, being in the arena.
It was great, but it wasn't an entertaining Montreal team to watch. I mean, even during that run, it was all based around Price shutting the door and the blue line hitting everyone. It wasn't about high octane action, scoring goals and everything.
It was a team with a foundation built on tissue paper. It's like Weber on his last gasp. Carey Price. And the thing is, Carey Price played well throughout the playoffs. It wasn't like Billy Smith during the Islanders.
It was excellent during the first 3 rounds. He was dead during the Stanley Cup final. Simple as that. And the whole run was just because of what you had there was 23 guys motivated to get 2 veterans a Stanley Cup before it was too late. That's all it was. It was just like, let's win this for Shea and Carey, and that's it.
It's also some, come on, Corinne. That's Montreal Magic. I mean,
Montreal Magic, my foot.
No. Montreal Magic exists. I believe in it. I do. I've witnessed it. It's like there's something to that place. There's something to that arena. There's something to that jersey.
I believe in the Loch Ness Monster too, but no.
No. This is real. Is a real thing, and you do not take that away from me, Mike.
There's someone in the chat that's asking if it's true that Price had a setback. It didn't really have a setback. The thing is, because of the whole COVID break for like a month, he hasn't skated in like a month. So it's like he's starting all over the rehab from his knee operation. That's really all it is.
Right.
So there's no word as to when he'll be coming back yet.
Corinne, I would seriously doubt that anything is going to happen with Price before the deadline, simply because of the big salary.
Such a big contract to move. That's going to be tricky.
That's a summer move. And you know what? That's a move that the new management might make on the floor at the draft.
I feel like
in the building that would be
the big
quite
splash.
Special.
Like hiding Peter Svoboda at the Montreal floor.
Something like that. Yes.
This to me is so perfectly set up in the Montreal lore for Price to go to Colorado and follow in the way of Wah, to go to a team that's ready to win, to go to a team that doesn't have a goalie, to go to a team that's like that. If he goes to that team, Colorado wins 2-3 Stanley Cups.
Well,
it feels.
How do you fit that money though? How do you fit in that money? I mean, if the Canadians are rebuilding, like I think they will be, they can eat a significant part of the contract.
They will eat a significant part of it.
But,
they can bring a third team in.
Colorado is quite near the cap, aren't they?
Nobody's gonna be the third team on a deal when he has 4 years left. So that's
true. But I think if you're Colorado, you take a chance on somebody on this. You actually move some money out, a significant player. Because I'm trying. What was the Patrick Waugh trade?
It was Ryan Keane,
Jocelyn
Thibault, and Kovalenko and Husinski.
Right. Now at the time, Kovalenko was a pretty serious prospect, correct?
No, not really.
So none of those guys were really significant players.
No.
There was feeling that there was a draft pick involved too, or no? Is that it? That was it?
I'll double check. I don't.
I think it was it. Jean-Louis got seriously schooled by Pierre Lacroix. That's what it was.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one. But, at the end of the day, you have the same. Yeah. Your Colorado's in the same place they were in then.
Very good. The whole deal was Kovalenko, Ruchinski, and Thibault. No draft pick. Along with Patrick Roy was Mike Keane. Yeah. And Mike Keane was a key member of that team for Stanley.
He was also a big part of that team. Yeah. I mean, and I believe
Thibault was the captain when he was traded as well.
He was the captain of the Canadiens. That's right. And Thibault was a serious prospect, though. He was a serious goalie.
He was young when that deal was made. I think he was 22 or 95. He was 20 years old. He was
I saw him play one of his first games for the Canadiens.
He was a former first-round pick, so they were hoping that he would develop into the next Roy, and he didn't.
Yeah, but talk about pressure. You're being dealt with for your childhood idol, and you have to fill in for him right now.
I mean, I saw one of his first games in Philadelphia. I sat right behind the goal, too. I was just lucky at the time as a kid, and someone gave me tickets like 10 rows behind. So I watched Jocelyn Thibault for 2 periods in a Canadiens uniform, one of the first times he played.
See, this is why a deal in season might be impossible for for Price and the Avalanche right now, unless you're prepared, unless Montreal is prepared to take like Eric Johnson's contract back at $6 million.
Why not?
Well, I mean, why would they want to act? That's what I'm saying.
Well, if they get a first round, they get a couple picks. There's more things involved.
They'd have to get one of Colorado's young
best
defensemen like Bowen Byram,
right,
or maybe Samuel Girard, who's under contract. See, he's got 5 years left at $5 million. That would be a sizable.
Would not get Girard.
Well, but that's the point. It's like
no, but I mean Byron. If you can get in.
I don't know if they'd give up Bowen Byram. That's the thing. We know that Sakic is very careful when it comes to his prospects, and like Alex Newhook is starting to step in as a center, and they're going to need him when Kadri goes free agent this summer. So I think they'd be genuinely interested in Price. And Kemper went down yesterday after getting sideswiped by Jordan Greenway. But I think in the short term, they're probably more in on the Fleury sweepstakes than they are on Price, at least for this year, because it's a rental. It's a pure rental.
That's the thing. Like if you get Fleury, you've got 1 year, and then you have the same problem in Colorado. Like if you don't have a goalie next year, unless you get Fleury to come back, whatever. But Fleury is older, and Price is Price. Like I think that. The reality there, if you're Sakic, you've got to make a go at this. You've got to take a shot. You've got to take a shot at something. You can't sit back and not look at this opportunity. I mean, Sakic won those Stanley Cups with Patrick Roy as the goal. Like he was there playing for that team. He knows what this could mean. He knows where this could go. I think that's a no-brainer for Sakic. And if he doesn't go for him, it would really be a disappointment. I think on many levels. I mean, they have to give it a shot. I mean, I do think at the end of the day, maybe Price is immovable, but my gosh, has there ever been a better fit? Like if we don't have a salary cap, if you don't have a salary cap, is there a better fit than Price in Colorado right now?
Well, in a perfect world, the fit would be Carey Price in Edmonton because they, but Edmonton.
I don't think so. I mean, Edmonton for Price. I mean, yeah. But Colorado's a better team than Edmonton. And
right.
Neither team's won a Stanley Cup. So
Edmonton's more desperate. I think Colorado can get away with a goaltender not like on Mount Olympus or like Price. They could get away with a good goaltender with the team that they have in front of them. Edmonton needs a superstar between the pipes to make up for their defensive deficiencies. The problem is that the price of that he's 33 or 34 years old, he might not be capable of doing that anymore. But
there's that too, and you have to worry about the injuries.
I think Price is capable of playing at the top of his game when it matters. Like when it was the playoffs last year, it was great. Before then, it was just like, And when he was asked how he, brings his game up, he just says, well, the playoffs are fun.
And Patrick Roy was no different, by the way. Patrick Roy was the same way towards the end of his career in Colorado. Patrick Roy had some some seasons in Colorado that weren't the greatest, but when the playoffs came around, he was amazing, and it's the same kind of thing. These goalies have the ability to lift their level. Fleury, see, I think stylistically, Fleury is a better fit in Edmonton, and Price is a better fit in Colorado.
I don't think so. I think Fleury, to be really good, needs a good defense in front of him. Edmonton is not going to make him not good at all.
No, I think Fleury in Colorado makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, Fleury's career, like Fleury has played best hockey with bad defenses in front of him. Like he's
Vegas not Edmonton bad.
Not Edmonton.
Well, Pittsburgh wasn't the greatest at times, early in his career there, and they were not very good defensively at all, and he played.
But he's a different goalie now. He's 37 years old. I mean, he was a freak in terms of going out and go post to post and the acrobatics. Now he's still great, but I think he needs a defense in front of him. The Vegas defense when they made the Cup final was not terrible. It was pretty.
No, they weren't terrible. I agree with you. But last year they were pretty bad, and he was carrying them a lot through a lot of that. Yeah. A lot of playoffs last year.
No, Corinne, let me ask you this, because we know the Canadians are going to be sellers. Now they have their GM and their president in place, and now the task over the next 2 months is to find out who you want to jettison and what you can get to jettison them. Gallagher's name has been out there, and the thing I'm skeptical about is 5 more years at $6.5 million for a guy who's undersized and has been a warrior and a pain in the ass for years. But as he starts to lose speed, he's not a big player, and that's going to be tough. I mean, if they move him, I don't know how much they get for him just because of the term on that deal.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's going to be a matter of, does he want to stay or does he want to go? If he wants to go, because when he signed his contract, he said, what's important to me is winning. So if he says, I'm not interested in rebuild, they will trade him, whatever the return is. And, you can't blame a player for that. You can't blame him for wanting to win. Honestly, I love Gallagher, as you might see from, what's on the wall.
Yeah.
If he's got to be moved, he's got to be moved. Then the men in charge are going to take stock and just decide where they want to go. I fully expect Price to go. I think Sherratt is a given. He's going to go at deadline. I think Jeff Petrie as well is going to go. He's having a really bad season. But if you look at the seasons before that, Petrie is actually a very good defenseman, very useful for a team. So I expect him to go, especially with his family now in the US. So. Yeah.
What about now? I know Edmondson's been hurt most of the year, but I don't think it's season ending. Is there any talk about him moving, or Drouin, who's got a year left, or what other names have you heard?
Edmondson I've not heard mentioned, mainly because he hasn't played so far, but he's not played for 3 things. First, a back injury, then his dad had cancer and he died in the last few weeks, so he went to the funerals and all that, and he's had COVID as well. So Edmondson's not back yet, and there's no timetable for his return at all right now. So I don't know if he'll be moved at all. But
the guys with term like Toffoli and Dvorak and Armia and Hoffman. I mean, it's
who on earth is going to take on Yoel Armia? That's what I want to know. I don't think anyone's going to want him. I think people will want someone like Likonen, which is a shame because he's cheap and he's very useful. So I'd actually like to keep him. But
That's why they want them. That's why they want him.
There'll be a lot of suitors for him. But Toffoli, I can see moving as well.
Toffoli's a great trade deadline thing because he's been great in the playoffs. He's got these one Stanley Cup.
Let's face it, he signed a very reasonable contract as well because he signed it in the COVID year type of thing where Montreal was the only team who actually had money to spend. So free agents came, yay! So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's amazing.
So there was a couple things that were newsworthy that we should mention.
Oh yeah, let's start with the NHL's decision going to the NHLPA to following the All-Star weekend, no longer test players unless they have symptoms. And this comes after they had, by the way, said that in the last 5 weeks, 60% of the players in the league had tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, okay. First of all, that's following what the NFL and what the NBA are doing because that's what they're doing currently. Mm-hmm. I was telling Corinne, I collated what the Leafs the COVID positives on the Leafs, and 21 of their 24 players were positive. The only ones that I knew were not reported as being positive at one time were Matthews, Michael Bunting, and Kyle Clifford. So for that team, everybody got it, and now everybody is past it. Not to say that they could get positive again, because with variants that are out there, we don't know. But it's a scenario where everybody, and I've been saying this since the beginning of the pandemic, everybody's going to get it. It's a question of whether you're passing it on to somebody and whether you are having symptoms yourself. It is so insidious right now that I don't think there's any way to protect people from getting it. So I think they're just, right now they have a ton of games to play, and they're just going to sort of trudge through. And I think that's the reality here.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same in Montreal. The Canadiens announced today that Caulfield and Armia are now on the COVID list, and Caulfield had it when he was still with the Wisconsin Badgers. Armia had it last year, so they're just starting to get it again now. And I think there's only Suzuki who's not added it with Canadiens.
Yeah, I think Matthews had the original strain, and but he hasn't had a Delta.
Matthews was, if I remember right, the first player who tested positive for COVID, right?
One of the first, and there was a big hubbub about it being reported as positive, it was
before we went into the bubble and all that stuff. It was
but see, the thing is, I mean, it was an infringement on his freedom of privacy bullcrap. It's now everybody's being reported, and the teams are reporting that. So the furor that happened back in July of 2020, because Steve Simmons reported that he was positive. Now today it's gee, I have a cold. Oh, I have COVID. It's like nothing. But
yeah.
But no, I mean, I think the NHL. I mean, and the other thing sort of tied to this act was that they're probably going to announce the revised schedules today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. And for teams like Montreal, who they pushed a lot of games out because they were not allowed to have fans, or Toronto, who has 9 games to make up, they're going to be really busy during that Olympic break, where other teams who have continued to play, like Tampa might have 2 or 3 games rescheduled in that 3 weeks. So they're going to get a nice long rest going into the last part of the season.
Oh yeah, no, really.
Yeah, but
really
that's the way it is with that thing. Last year, was it Vancouver was off for a month because everyone was sick, and then they had 4,000 games in 10 days.
Right, they were playing 4 games in 4 nights. Yeah, something.
That really, I mean, that is one of the bigger. I still think that last year's COVID thing with the Canucks is they really just set them back from a team that was really on the right course, and then suddenly isn't. And they still. And I mean, they're sort of back on that right course now. But speaking of teams that are back on the right course, Mike, before another news, I do want to talk a little bit of hockey for a second here, because we, the Islanders last night win again.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Are you kidding me? They're not back on the right course. My goodness. Excuse me.
Yes. They are. Okay, so currently the Islanders are, had played 31 games, which is 9 games less than it's 8 games less than the Capitals. And because I think the Capitals are the team that's going to get caught here. If any team's going to get caught, I think it's the Caps. So I'm really just kind of paying attention to the Islanders and Caps right now. So in 8 less games, they have 21 fewer points. Okay. So let's talk about that for a second. All right. 21 fewer points in 8 less games. All right. So obviously, they're not going to win all 8 of those games. So let's say they win 6 of the 8. They make up 12 points. So that really puts them 9 points behind, right? 9 points behind the Capitals. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's impossible. And I think that, and if they win all of them, of course, if they win all 8 games, but they have the Flyers again tonight. There are definitely, the schedule sets up kind of nicely for them. I do think that we're going to see a race between the Islanders and the Capitals. I just looking into my crystal puck, which I left upstairs in my office, but I have to bring it back down here. I think that I can see it as something I really can see a battle.
You're looking at that, and I'm looking at what they could get for Kyle Clutterbuck at the deadline, because they're done. You know, they're not okay. They're not going to give up. They're going to try. They're a team that made 2 conference finals. I get that. I just see this, you know, this deficit, the size of the Red Sea, and there's nobody that is Moses that can part it. It's too much. You know, based on how they've played, based on the injuries that they've had, based on the inconsistency, there's no way they're going to make this up. Now, are they going to quit? No,
they'll keep trying, but the East is set.
Yeah.
They're far better than any of the other teams that are not in the playoffs, okay, in the East. Okay, so they're, the difference between the Islanders, and watching them play last night, you can see it. They just are.
Well, that's not saying much because the top 8, this is a top-heavy conference where the top 8 have distanced themselves so much from the bottom 8.
The bottom 8 are all, the top 8 are close to 700. The bottom 8 are all except for Detroit under 500. So it's like, no, there's no question that you're right. I mean, you are right on all that. I agree completely. But the reality is that the Islanders have a lot of games and a lot of home games. And, for what it's worth, this is a team, obviously, it's not traveling very much. The Capitals are not a perfect team by any stretch of the imagination.
And I'm not saying that they are, but I'm saying, okay, the 8. Talk to me when the Islanders have made up that 8-game deficit and they've gone 8-0, and then they're 5
points back.
Then they're 5 points back, and then we have a race. But it's tough to go 8-0.
It's tough to go 8-0, but it's not impossible to go 6-2, 7-1. And the other thing is, so over the last 10 games, they picked up 5 points on the Capitals playing. They're picking up. If you keep picking up, a couple points, 5 points, 6 points every 10 games, there's still a lot of games left. There's still 4 of those processes. 4, that's.
I just, and this is the main issue with the Islanders right now. They are dead last in the NHL in offense. 71 goals. They're 7 less than the Montreal Canadiens, Corinne.
Well, yeah, but Montreal has played 5 games more.
I know. I'm just saying, the Islanders' offense has been pitiful, and you didn't really expect that with Barzal and Nelson and Bailey.
And and Lou knows this. It's all about their defensive transition.
Right,
if they can go out there and get something to help that,
they're not going to be getting stuff. They're going to be selling stuff.
No, they're not, because this is Lou Lamoriello, who's 70 years old. Okay, he is not giving up. Trust me, I know people close to Lou. I know that he is not going to be giving up. He is shopping for a defenseman right now.
Unless he's got a hotline to Jim Nill in Dallas to get Klingberg, who would be basically the defenseman that they would need. Now, the thing is that Klingberg is not a Barry Trotz type of defenseman. He's a rover. He's an offenseman, and that's not what Trotz wants. Right. But that's what they need: a puck carrier, who a point guy on the power play, and unless they're prepared to give up young assets to get him, they're not going to get him. And I don't know if there's anybody out there that really fits that for them to get. So I don't know.
I wonder if they would get back into Leddy. I do, because of the idea, that he is part of that. They really need a first. Even last night against Philly, who has nothing going for it all for him right now, they still had a tough time with their first pass out, of the zone. I'm just trying. They're past. That is where they're not even getting started. They're a team with a bunch of receivers and no quarterbacks. It's like they have no concept, and it's very, very tough. Though, that Lamoriello is not looking at this like a rebuild. He's not looking at them as sellers. He's not going to be a seller. There's no way he'll be a seller. I promise you.
But I talked to a reporter last week who covers the Islanders, and he was of the same opinion that I am, that if Lou's going to do anything, he's going to keep his powder dry. He's going to wait to see what they do with a bunch of games in hand that they have. And if they don't make up the ground that is needed to be made up, they're not going to trade their first round pick. They're not going to make any short-term moves. They're going to trade their UFAs, and they're going to go into the summer trying to retool, not rebuild. But when you're this far behind, it's over.
Well, it takes two. When you're this far behind, it takes 2 things to happen, right? It takes them playing suddenly like the Islanders everybody thought they'd be, right? which is a big ask because they're not that team. But if they were, it takes them doing that. And it also takes another team to collapse.
Yes.
And, and I tell you that when I watch the Capitals, it's like when you look at them, their goaltending is shaky. Their defense is shaky.
But you were talking about them trading Vanacek.
I know, but that's a rumor that I heard. That I'm not, I also.
I'm saying that's what you.
But in that same phrase, I said I wouldn't trade Vanacek. I think he's their best goalie, but that's the rumor I heard is that he's the one that they would trade, right? But I wouldn't do that. And if they do that, I think again, that's another reason I'm sitting there saying, they are not what they seem to be. Ovechkin, if he's not playing out of his mind. And how long can he continue to? I mean, he's slowed down a little bit. He's still picking up. He's still picking up goals.
Well, I mean, Oshie.
But if he comes back to life, back down to normalcy, even, and their goaltending, this is a team that can at times look old and slow.
Well, I mean, they just lost Oshie to injury. I don't know how serious it was, but Ovechkin carried that team on his back while Backstrom is out. Now Backstrom is back,
right?
So the burden is a little less on him. I don't know. Right now I don't see the collapse there. The only thing I see is a little bit of the vulnerability in goal if Samsonov and Vanacek aren't an effective tandem. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think that they're going to play like 400 hockey to allow the Islanders to play 750 catch up.
Right. That's what has happened. But the Islanders do have the advantage of the games at hand. They do have the advantage of the games at home. So it's hard,
which hasn't been, Corinne.
Right.
That hasn't been an advantage yet.
Well, no, that's the thing. You still have to win those games, and that's easier said than done.
So. Oh, for sure. I wanted to mention this too briefly, because we don't talk women's hockey enough on here, but I did want to get to this before we get to the other news, Mike, and that is the
PHF.
Yeah, the PHF, which is the Premier Hockey Federation. This is the old NWHL, right? This is the same group, and they have are being propelled. They put out a press release. PHF propelled by game-changing $25 million investment. Right. This is the largest one-time independent investment in women's professional hockey. Expand the league, provide updated facilities, and give players great, raise their salary cap essentially. This is important, and I'm really happy about this move, and I think that it comes at a great time because the Olympics are still going to have the best women in the world playing in them.
Yes, but the best women in the world are not going to be playing in the PHF because that's not, the Canadian league was better than that, and they don't pay their players enough. To me, that league is not going to be taken seriously until the NHL actually sponsors it, like the Premier League does with football in England, like the NBA does with the WNBA. That's what's needed.
And that's the problem here, Corinne, because the NHL basically says you settle it amongst yourselves, and whoever survives this battle between the PHF and the other league, we'll back you then, but we don't want to get involved in this turf war. And until they do take a side, it's going to continue to be a turf war because the players on one side don't believe that the management of the NWHL, now the PHF, is doing the right thing, but they're the ones who have the money. They're the ones who are just got this investment and seem to be more structured than the other side. So I don't know if this is ever going to get settled.
Well, it
doesn't seem like it is, but the thing is, you're not going to have a good league if you don't have the Philippe Poulin, you don't have the Larry Knights, you don't have the Kenneth Cole Schofield, you don't have the great girls, so you can't have the best league, and that's as simple as that. I mean, the NHL needs to step up, and then the players will come in the fold.
I mean,
if the NHL says fine, we'll sponsor that, they'll join. But
I mean, the obvious thing is the NHL sponsors it, and the CWL joins in with this whole thing, and then you have the combination of the two together and have the best league in the world. That's what you need. I mean, the CWL has had some real problems the last couple of years. And I don't think this is going to help them, in terms of, I mean, if the money's going to be for those better players, the money's going to be in the PHF now. It's the reality is it's going to be there. Whether or not who knows, if some of those players leave. But it really, the idea here is obviously it's hard to have two professional leagues competing against each other at a sport that is already up against it, right? So you really want to see them join together. And I agree. I 100% agree with you that the NHL needs to sponsor this.
But they won't.
So far, it's crazy because it felt like they were going to, and then COVID hit, and I think that now the NHL is these teams are.
They saw a benefit, a financial benefit, and a PR benefit of potentially getting involved because they want to get involved in women's hockey. They want to be involved in issues of diversity. It's all good to do that. But then they saw the minefield that it was, and they're like, okay, we have to basically survive ourselves right now with what's going on. So we don't have the additional a revenue to go down this road right now and let them fend for themselves at least for a little while. Honestly, I don't understand the war here. I know that the two sides are sort of bitterly opposed to each other, but they have to sort of grow up and find a compromise and have one league, and then the NHL would back them.
Well, that's the thing, though. There is only one league now. The Canadian League is dead, so there is only one league left. If Gary Bettman and co come and sponsor the one league left, then the players will come because they'll be like, okay, there'll be money now. We'll go. But these women don't want to play for peanuts.
The Canadian League is dead, right, Karen?
Yeah, it is.
But but the talent that we talked about, they're not signing in this other league. They're maintaining they're
doing the Dream Gap Tour and stuff like that. Right now they're just training for the Olympics with their national teams and stuff, but they're not signed. They haven't played significant hockey in quite some time now.
It'd be really something if they could get get things together right now, because the Olympics is always a huge boost for women's hockey.
It's a springboard. Yeah.
The thing is, I mean, you look at Marie-Philippe Poulin. She's not getting any younger, and she's the most talented player out there, the most talented women's player I've ever seen.
Oh,
and if you wait too long, she's going to be past her expiry date, and that's just awful.
And there's going to be opportunity here. From what I saw, the PHF is expanding by 2 teams, including Montreal. So, I mean, you put players in Montreal who are, very prominent, and I think it would be a success there. But I just agree, just negotiate something to get all these players in, and I mean, it would be something that fans, I think, would like to watch.
No, there's no question. Yeah. I mean, and Cassie Campbell, who might be the best player ever. It's debatable. Haley
Wickenheiser, Cassie.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped Cassie on a penalty shot in a media game, just like
if you stopped her, there's not a chance she's the best.
No, of course, she's way older. She also worked for HockeyBuzz for a while, which was great.
I spoke to Marie-Philippe Poulin at my cousin's wedding because her cousin was marrying my cousin. I asked her, how do you feel when you scored 2, Olympic golden goals? Do you know what she said? Lucky. She said she felt lucky. I'm like, it's not luck, it's talent, you idiot.
She is great. I will tell you that when I covered the Olympics in Vancouver, the most fun part of that, I mean, it was obviously incredible to cover that golden game, with Crosby and all that, and that great run, and to take the bus from from where I was staying to the arena with "Oh Canada" being sung like as loud as possible on the bus. It was a great, incredible moment. But walking the hall down below the arena with before the Canadian women's team played the U.S. women's team, and hearing the obscenities coming from both locker room towards the other, being screamed at back and forth. I have never seen anything like it in my life. Like, never seen any amount of, ire, like the amount of ire and the anger. It was awesome. It was intense. It was incredible.
I'll tell you what I haven't seen in 12 years, and I just saw it yesterday because the Olympic Twitter feed tweeted out the video of the golden goal by Crosby. And I've only seen that before yesterday. I've only seen it twice.
Right.
Because they control the video. But
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So.
And you have often complained about that goal is not the NHL because the NHL doesn't have the ability to play it.
Now I'll tell you.
The crazy thing about that goal is the two of the most interesting games I've ever seen in my life happened that same year, with the ending result being the same: Crosby scoring on Miller.
Yeah, and the outdoor game.
The Winter Classic outside and the gold medal game. It was awesome. Anyway, Mike, go ahead. So
last night, a very entertaining and interesting game between Pittsburgh and Vegas, and it's sort of a microcosm of because Pittsburgh was down 3-0 dominated the shots on goal in the game, and they came back in the second period, tied up the game, and won 5-3. And I'm telling you, I know that Russ has been the big backer of Pittsburgh. Now Malkin's back, so you got Malkin and Crosby on the top two lines. If Jari can play at least competently, and Russ was saying he thinks they'll make a deal before the deadline to add something because you got Burke and Hextall there, and
they will.
They've got this window. Honestly, I would be scared to play that team.
Oh, there are. I mean, we just have to. Can we just give Sullivan the award? Like, do we have to even think about this? I mean,
Coach
of the year. Is there anybody close? Like, is there anybody really?
How about Dean Evison in Minnesota?
Yeah, but no. Like, I'm going to sit there and say. I mean, I agree. Dean Evison's done a great job, but I think this is the best coaching job I've ever seen in a season. Go ahead.
It's 2 p.m. so I kind of gotta go for.
Okay, thanks though. Thanks so much for jumping on. We appreciate it.
That's all right. It was fun.
Keep the great work up,
and speak to you soon.
Keep the great work up. Thank you so much. We'll be out of here soon. Thanks so much.
Bye.
I honestly just think that this is the best coaching job we've ever seen. Like, this to me is
it's great. It's great, especially because he had to deal with a sizable chunk of the season without Crosby.
Oh my gosh.
All this time without Malkin and Evan Rodriguez being your number one center for a good stretch, but
a questionable goaltending situation to start the seain. These are nightmares for coaches.
But the goaltending in Minnesota, it's Kakkonen and Cam Talbot. It's not a great goaltending situation either.
Yeah, but Jari, people were calling for that. Like, the Penguins fans were so
because he stunk in the playoffs, but the regular season he was great, and he's great again this time.
No, he has been incredible this time, and like Malkin. And the other thing I saw the crazy stat about Getzel, who like people like just don't even think about Getzel as much as because he's obviously, but he has he scored last night, which gives him 20 goals, right? With his goal last night, I saw this on Reddit. Getzel joins Ovechkin, Matthews, Marchand, Kyle Connor, which is another kind of interesting name in there, and Leon Draisaitl as the only players to have 5 20-goal seasons since the beginning of the 2017 year. So that's some high company, and that's Getzel. Getzel is a hell of a player. Like, he is literally, who knows? I mean, he's way better than people give credit for. And then, at the end of the day,
he's the perfect complementary player to Crosby.
He really is. He really is.
But he's been able to succeed outside of playing with Crosby, which is, like guys like Pascal Dupuis and Chris Kunitz, when Crosby wasn't around, they really weren't that good of players, but they were good complements to Crosby. Gunsel is able to be a good complement and play on his own as well. And the thing is, this people say, well, Rust is a UFA and Letang is a UFA, Malkin is a UFA, that this might be their last kick at the can. And Russ pointed out to me that Malkin has said that he would take less to stay.
Yeah.
So it may not be the last kick of the can, but I think they're going to approach it that way because they have an opportunity to win.
But what they've shown this year is they're okay if they lose those guys. I mean, they're going to be okay.
They say that they're not. What I'm saying?
No, they've shown that they're okay.
It's one thing to not have them because of injury, because they're going to be back. It's another thing if they're someplace else and there is nothing to fall back on. I think they're two different things. The other thing from last night that I have to mention before we go is the 5-goal performance by Timo Meier against the LA Kings.
Yeah.
I watched the third period of that because he scored 5 goals in like the first half of the game. And then he was out there, I'd have to say at least 9 minutes in the third period, trying to get the 6th goal to tie Red Berenson and Daryl Sittler. And he had a couple opportunities, but couldn't beat Jonathan Quick. 5 goals. I mean, great effort.
I mean, and the Sharks are sitting there and they're battling. I mean, they're in this thing, they're not in a playoff spot right now, but they're not, I don't see them out of it. Like they are literally I'm looking at now.
They're in the wild.
They're in the second wild card right now but they have played games in hand on a lot of teams.
Right. I mean, they're at 44 points, but they've played 6 more games than Calgary, Winnipeg, 5 more games in Edmonton, 5 more games in Dallas. So
you really have to look at winning percentage right now with some of these things, because to give you an idea of how good these teams really are or not, because the Calgary, lost 4 in a row. That's an issue. Edmonton's lost 3 in a row. it's a lot of losses in that province. Yeah, this is but I think the Sharks have a chance. Winnipeg, have a chance. Dallas has a chance, even though right now, they're so far down. But even Vancouver has worked their way back into it too. I mean, look at all these teams are just almost. Vancouver's just 1 point behind 500 right now.
No team is going to quit, as we said. But if Dallas is, as the reports are out there, legitimately shopping Klingberg, then to my mind that means, okay, we have to get something for him now because we're going to lose him if we, because we're not going to sign him, and we're not exactly 100% confident that we're going to make the playoffs. That's the mindset there.
Yeah, but in a way, what it reminds me of a little bit? It reminds me of the Blues. Was it Shattenkirk they were shot? Remember?
No, Pietrangelo in November and December. Before they called up Bennington and went on that run, but that run, I mean, like that's.
No, but I'm talking about before that, the trade deadline. It was Shattenkirk was there, and gets moved to the Capitals, right?
And they did the same thing with Paul Stastny when they traded him to.
Right. They were a bubble playoff team at the time,
right?
Just like Dallas is, and I think reality is that if you're a bubble playoff team and you're going to lose these guys for nothing, you
have to move them.
You have to move them. Unless is your team really needs to, make some playoff money, which is a situation that a lot of teams are in right now.
And that's why, like when we were talking with Kevin about Philip Forsberg, they're not a bubble team. They're in the top 3. They need to keep them. They're
if you're going to be in the playoffs, I mean, every playoff game is well worth it for you. You got to keep going. But I mean, the way Vancouver's played lately, I mean, I've been impressed by them too. There's a lot of teams in the West, and quietly the Ducks are starting to play like the Ducks.
Well, they're 2-6-2 in their last 10 games. So
3 losses in a row.
Maybe they're falling down to reality a little bit, but
they have to. I mean, come on. It's like, I mean, but the other big point with the Ducks is their goal differential is 0 right now. So, and giving up, and they've given up 120 goals in 41 games. That's not acceptable.
And you know whose goal differential is 0 right now? The Edmonton Oilers.
I know. And it was like plus 25 at one point. So you're talking about, I mean, the Oilers have, I mean, in a similar situation, Anaheim, and it's kind of crazy that the crazy thing is that the Ducks offense has 120 goals and the Oilers offense in 6 less games, granted, has 117 goals. So you're looking at, I mean, the Oilers offense should be so much better than the Ducks offense.
But the problem is that they've been without Gibson, and that's the most important thing. He's been out for 2 weeks. I don't know when he's coming back, and you can't survive with Anthony Stolarz as your number 1 goaltender.
Right? No, you really can't, and that's. Stolarz is much better than people give him credit for, but he's not going to take a team that most people thought was going to be in the race for the first overall pick, into the playoffs. I mean, this is a team that should not be there. They shouldn't be there. And will they be able to keep it going or not? I mean, and will the Sharks be able to, will they think about moving these guys? They have some serious trade possibilities there. They could really set themselves up here, the Sharks.
Well, I mean, and the thing is that we'll talk about this going forward is, if Anaheim starts to slip and they're in the wild card race, and then they're a bubble team, Kell and Lindholm and Josh Manson, all of a sudden they become, players that they might trade because they could lose some or all of them for nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be there's such a big buzz around them right now for their fans. It's a hard thing to imagine that they would be a seller. When they really feel, but you also have to look at the fact that they have played. How many games have they played now?
43, I think.
So they're just over half, right? So literally,
just under half.
Just under half. Sorry, just under half.
38.
Oh, 38. Okay, so 38. So yeah,
they're exactly at half. 41, 19, 15, and 7.
All right, we got that now. We're always good at that numbers thing. Exactly half, which is incredible because it feels like the season is. Doesn't it feel like the season is way more than half over?
Well, it would be if we hadn't had a 3-week interruption because of
right. And of course, it's middle of January, so normally this is when
we're going to get dizzy with games between now and the end of April, because I mean it's 3 games in 4 nights is going to be nothing.
And that is when you're going to see teams who don't have backup goalies really struggle. Like, the reality is when these games get tight, that's why, like, you don't look at Philly and like you look at Philly and like, oh, geez, I look at Washington and I'm not sure, like, depending on how they play this thing, they have 3 goalies or they have no goalies, right? That's
Tampa's got Brian Elliott, but they have that team in front of them, so that will mitigate it. Boston.
Florida's got 2. Boston's got 2.
But Toronto's got 2 as well. So yeah,
Toronto has 2 as well, and that this is going to help them. The Rangers are all in the same boat. So these Asian teams, I mean, Carolina, this could hurt.
I mean, Ronta, with Carolina, it's always health. It's like Ronta's been constantly injured, so over his career, if he stays healthy and it's him and Anderson, then that's a good combo too. Is Casey DeSmith with Jari in Pittsburgh? Who knows? So
yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh this could affect Pittsburgh. I think that we have to look at that when teams are playing, when 5 games a week becomes a regular thing. Like you say, we're gonna see 5-game weeks for a lot of teams. That's I mean, the Islanders, especially benefit from having, if everybody's healthy, 2 goalies that are solid.
Yeah,
and that can help them as they go along here. So that's my take is to still look out for the Islanders as we go along here. I really do think so, but we'll see. I guess that's all the time we have for today, folks. We want to thank you all for watching, and remember, you can always support us. We really appreciate it if you go to patreon.com/hockey. And if you get any value out of this at all, but even more than that, one thing we'd like you guys to do a little bit more of, if you could, is write a review or some of us. Go to especially the Apple podcast and write a positive review. That helps us a lot, puts us into more recommendations, and people will find out more about us. So we would appreciate that. So do anything you can. If you can't support us financially, then just if you can support us, with your words, that would be great. We love doing the show. We want to keep doing it as long as we possibly can. Okay, folks, remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight. We will talk to you tomorrow.